What's going on, guys? Today we're going to do a quick spin around my RC toolbox. At the office all day, I've got this in by my desk, and then if I'm doing videos or anything like that, I wheel it into here. So having a setup that's mobile and has everything that I think that I need for typical 1/10 scale RC building really has to be in one spot to make it as efficient for me as possible. But the toolbox itself is not what I'm here to cover. It's mainly what I've got in there. I've really kind of refined and picked and chose what exactly I want in my toolbox. If it's heavy fabrication, that's going to be out in the shop. I'll probably need some heavier tools or some different power tools, things like that. Let's jump into it. We'll work from top to bottom and I'll show you everything that I've got collected in this toolbox. The top of the toolbox is a mix and match of things with just a basic light organization to it. So starting on the left, I usually carry a big thing of shoe goo, Machinist 123 blocks. This is just, it's a 1" by 2" by 3" block of steel. They come in handy for weight or just to step things up, to rest things on. I will try and link to as many of the things in the toolbox as I can in case you have any questions. Try and keep a bin of marking utensils, pens, pencils, Sharpies, and also those are some metallic Sharpies. Helps different materials depending on what you're trying to mark on. It is good to have different colors. This is a box of standard X-Acto knives with a bunch of replacement tips. In the back corner, I keep a number of different types of tape. Regular 3M double-sided tape, standard RC servo tape, and then I've got a couple rolls of electrical tape. I've got two different types of grease in the top here. One's a Vanquish one, one's from Fast Eddie Bearings. I've got a single bottle of shock oil. This is a 45 weight from Team Losi Racing. This is one that was given to me just the other day from Matt at A-Main. It's actually an Otis dry lube. It's a non-dust attracting lubricant. I also have this inexpensive punch set. Now, it's an 8-piece set. One of them I've either damaged or lost or something like that, but if you're ever working on RC, you have something stuck, it's nice to have some punches around. This is 4 brass ones and 4 steel versions. Obviously brass is softer, but if you're trying not to mark something or mar it when you're trying to punch something out, it's nice to have those brass options. Got a couple of different sizes of standard paint brushes. Now, this is just to dust off an RC, clean it up before you're trying to work on it on the bench, anything like that. This is a very small ball peen hammer picked up. It's a Pittsburgh cheapie, but just a nice size to carry in the top of a box like this without taking up a lot of room, and you usually don't need too big of a hammer when working on RCs our size. I've got a small unorganized box of tapped dies and a couple of step bits in here, but 3mm, 4mm, 2.5, 8/32, 10/32, 440, just a number of different popular sizes in RC. Next to that, I've also got a number of drill bits. Now these actually have 1/4" drive adapters on them. These aren't the ones that I would use if I was trying to do a really precise or precision hole, but these are the ones that I use if I need to just, ream a hole, make a hole for a pass through, something like that. I use a few drills that have 1/4" drive adapters, and if I just want something quick and easy, these are nice to have. Plastic, thin aluminum, things like that, they work just fine. And then this is a very small drill bit set, kind of for real fine stuff, and I use these mainly with an actual hand tool to drill small holes in plastic or really high detail things like Lexan bodies. Up here towards the top, I've got this bin of screws. This actually was given to me initially by Screw Loose Hardware, and I've refilled it so many times in the past, but it's just the kind of perfect size. It's labeled up on top with the different screw sizes, and I just refill the bins as I need them. Stainless on one side, it was all black oxide on the other, but as I've refilled and things like that, some more stainless has found its way in there. Underneath that box of hardware, I carry this box of heat shrink, number of different sizes, and I just cut them to length as needed. This is a custom link measuring tool, not something you can actually buy, but just something I keep in my box to be able to quickly measure eye-to-eye lengths of existing links that I have. This is kind of just a multi-tool, different scraper, spatula type thing. I normally use this mainly for 3D printing, being able to pull supports off or things like that, but it also comes in handy in a lot of different applications. This is a 3D printed Zerba tool, and it holds the rod end. I've done a quick video showing exactly how I use these to build links. This is a modified dog bone from an axial that I've ground a little wider on the slot so that the rod end goes in there. I put this in my drill to tighten the other end of the rod end onto the half assembled link shaft. I've also added an O-ring around the outside since I did the initial video on this to keep the rod end centered in there while I'm tightening down with the drill. I've drilled a small hole in the side of that Zerba tool to hold that piece so that they stay together in my box. This is just a little rubberized J-Concepts parts tray. I've got 2 of these. I carry one in here, one stays on my desk most of the time. A few different pieces of electronics in the top here. This is a little servo tester. You can plug a receiver pack into it. You can use this to either center your servo or test the steering throw. I've got a little Venom battery checker. Plug your balance tap into the end, and it'll give you the overall voltage and voltage per cell. Having a multimeter in the box, always a nice thing to have. It allows you to either test voltage, continuity, resistance, things like that. Good tool to have. Learn how to use it. It can be really powerful. Underneath the multimeter, I've got your standard pack of precision screwdrivers, flathead and Phillips. As every RCer should, a Dremel tool, I prefer a corded version to a cordless version. If never fails, the cordless version would always be dead or just seem low on power. So I prefer the corded version. This is a 4000 series. Along with that, I've got a box of different Dremel bits, things like that. One of my favorite ones that not everyone uses is these sanding wheel flap discs. It's like little pieces of sandpaper that go around. The life of these is a lot longer than like the sanding drums. I just think that these are a better piece all around. And if you don't use them already, you should definitely pick them up. The Easy Lock fiber discs, I use the metal versions. These things last way longer than the cheaper cutoff wheels, and they're super quick to replace. As we get into the Dremel tools and stuff, this is mainly kind of fabrication tools. This is a little pop rivet gun. Rivets aren't necessarily something that a lot of RCers use, but if you're doing little metal work and things like that, riveting can actually be super low profile, nice, handy, and permanent. So if you're looking to expand some of the tools you carry, looking into a little rivet gun like this, not a bad idea. This is a pair of duckbill pliers. I use this for bending thin aluminum. It's just nice to have a long straight edge where you can grab a hold of an entire piece and bend it into shape. Next to those pliers, I've got 2 different sizes of tin snips. I work with a lot of 0.25 thick aluminum, and tin snips work great for that. Then we've got a rubber mallet, because you just always need a rubber mallet for something. This is a small set of needle files, handy for aluminum, plastic. I carry a lot of files in my toolbox. It's always nice to have a bunch of different sizes. On the right side over here, I've got a number of different sizes of zip ties as well as different colors. The small ones work really well. Zip ties are nothing new. Carry as many as you can. They're always helpful. This is something that probably not a lot of people carry though. This is jeweler's wire. This is super thin wire that's very flexible. I almost use these like a wire tie or a zip tie. Wrap it through, wrap it around, whatever, twist it, and then cut it short. It's a lot cleaner than a zip tie though, and as long as you're not worried about it cutting into whatever you're trying to retain, it's really nice, really clean, and it almost blends in with things. This drawer is mainly drivers or things with a single handle is kind of how I've organized it myself. Over here, I've got my standard drivers, 1.5, 2mm, 2.5. Then I've got my 3 standard sizes, which are 0.50, 1/16, 3/32, and I also have my 3.0mm driver. I've also got shorty versions of my 1.5 and 2mm drivers that I've just taken and cut the length of the tip down quite a bit in case that I just need to get into a tighter location. Above it, I've actually got 2 different types of center punches. One is a just standard punch that you'll hit with a hammer, and this is an auto punch. I like to make sure that I have a standard one like this around because you can't always use an auto punch because you have to press down into it so long. Sometimes if you're using really thin material, this doesn't work as well. I've got a standard X-Acto knife outside of that case that we have in the top. This is the one that I use most commonly, so it goes in the drawer with my most commonly used tools. Earlier I was showing those really fine precision drill bits. This is the hand drill that I use when using those. Again, this is something that I use like if I'm drilling in Lexan or very thin plastic and can't use a power drill. The precision drill bits, this drill handle, a little work mat, some sanding bars, all of that stuff I picked up in a Gundam model building kit. And it actually came with some rulers that I carry in the top of my box and forgot to cover as well. It's nice to have some metal rulers around, both a 12-inch and a 6-inch. They're fairly rigid, just work really nice for either straight edge cutting if you need to, along with the X-Acto knife, or you just always need a ruler to measure something. Continuing on, I've got some of my Vanquish tool tips with the Vanquish 1/4" drive adapters. If you're ever looking to get way deep into a vehicle, sometimes it is nice to have these longer tool tips. If I'm building with my power drivers, a lot of times I'll use this Dynamite tool set. It all tucks nicely into the handle, and inside it's got 7 different types of tips, and these all again have the standard 1/4" drive adapter on the bottom. I keep this little deburr tool in the box as well. It's got this 3-edge tip on the end. Nice to be able to get in there, clean out any holes that you just drilled or anything like that. I've got multiple sizes of standard tap handles in there. This super handy little Craftsman 5.5mm wrench has lived in my box for a long time, and it's always something that I end up needing to get into that really difficult spot to hold an M3 lock nut. Here's an oddball one for you. This is a dental tool pick. This is probably one of my more odd but highly used tools in the box, either for grabbing wires or picking at something. It's so handy to have. I would highly recommend picking a set of these up and keeping them in your toolbox. These 2 different sizes of tweezers also came in that Gundam model building kit. Standard RC body reamers. I like this axial one that's got the more fine point, and then of course you've got the more aggressive and larger style body reamer as well. One of my favorite tools in the box is this little hammer with a brass end on one side and a round ball peen style on the other. The ends are actually replaceable, and I've got a number of different ones in here as well, but this little brass side has got a lot of use. It's not aggressive, of course, you can tell just by the size of it, but I've used this hundreds and hundreds of times for $5. Definitely worth having in the box. Then we've got a few other different sizes and styles of files. Big flat files, triangle files, and then more needle files, more screwdrivers, nothing fancy here, regular Phillips, regular flathead. And lastly, for this drawer, got a couple of different box cutters. This drawer I've mainly organized into plier type tools. So I carry 5 different sizes and styles of needle nose pliers. Needle nose with a bent tip is one of my most used. Then we've got standard stubby needle nose, larger needle nose for something when you need to get a little bit more force onto, very fine needle nose, and then a more medium sized. Then I've got 4 different sizes of cutters in here. These are actually a big pair of cutters and crimpers. I've actually had these since my car audio days. I've got a flat style cutter on the end, small, very handy for zip ties, things like that. Large but aggressive style of side cutters. And then my most used style would be the very thin flush cuts. I use these a ton for taking parts off of sprues or anything like that where you want to try and get as flush down to the part as possible. So I've got a pair of body scissors and then just standard household scissors as well. I've got 4 different styles of vice grips. Now these are all kind of a small style, not something that you would maybe normally have around the garage, but for this size work, they come in really handy. Got, the needle nose sized. I've got 2 of the C-clamp style. These are super handy for holding parts together while you're working on something. And then just your normal style of vice grip. This type of plier I've always called a lineman style. Not really sure what the actual name is, but it's got some reduction to it. So nice if you need to cut something a little bit thicker. For doing wiring, I've got a standard set of wire strippers. And then this is actually a specialty set of pliers for doing the little crimp ends on your receiver plugs and things like that. Carry a leather punch for punching holes in tires before you've mounted them onto the wheel. These may be overkill for a lot of RC stuff, but every once in a while you just need to remove something. This is one of the smallest sets of E-clip pliers that Mac Tools makes. This is for use on things like the axle end tubes on a set of Vanquish Curry axles. And lastly, this is an old set of hot racing shock pliers. I'm pretty sure that I've used these far less on shocks than I have almost anything else. You can see that I've held things while getting a little bit closer to the belt sander than I should. The next drawer down is organized slightly, but is kind of a catch-all in other ways. A lot of these bins are just kind of organized into parts that I've used and keep around more so than things that I would normally suggest to have in your toolbox. For example, this top left here is mainly transmission gears and transmission parts that just happen to still be in my box. This bin here is more specialty hardware, things that I didn't want to just toss in with other screws, so I keep them separated into their own little bin. Then I've got this bin here, which is just rod end plastics and pivot balls. I have a bin here of just new bearings, either singles or full bearing kits such as SCX10s, SCX10-2s, things like that. Then I've got a bin of just aluminum spacers. This little box in the end is just Vanquish SLW hubs and center caps, as well as screws for scale wheels. Got a random box of shock springs and shock rebuild parts, as well as things like associated green slime. Then I have a bin of just organized drive shafts. This bin here is just random M3 screws, either button head or socket head, that I throw back into the box. This bin is just flathead M3 hardware. And then this bin here is just those M3 coarse thread screws and some of the smaller sizes as well. This bin here, which is just assorted links. Some titanium, some stainless, some stock aluminum stuff. Then on the right side here, this is mainly used parts, things that have been taken off rigs and just kept in the toolbox for a while. This is some more hardware. This is for that rivet gun that I showed earlier, just some small 1/8" rivets. And then we've got the very bottom drawer. Now, this again is kind of a catch-all space, but this is mainly a catch-all for new parts that I'm planning on using, projects, things like that. Then there's a few other things as well, like I keep my set of calipers in here. This is just a set of Mitutoyo dial calipers. Down here, I keep things like new receivers that I've still got. I've got gear sets for Futaba servos, Holmes bypass adapters. These are the RC Bros fabrication tabs. These are laser cut out of steel. You break them off and then weld them to whatever project you have. We've got new Traxxas big bores here, some assorted body posts, a bunch of new Proline Power Stroke shocks. This is an old custom super shafty transmission, some bulk XT60 style connectors, and a variety of lengths of different sensor cables. Again, this drawer more of a catch-all than anything. And then lastly, we've got the very bottom of the toolbox, which is important as well. So the bottom of the toolbox is full, but organized still. This basket on the end has a standard O-ring assortment box, and then the rest of this bin is just assorted wire and connectors. I try not to hoard too much wire scraps, but the ones that are long enough or good enough quality, I definitely do keep. I've showed in previous videos that I like to strip out a small section of Ethernet cable and keep the wire from it. These little twisted pairs are nice, fine wire, and they're usually multi-strand. Next to that bin, I've got a few different drivers. I've got my standard DeWalt 20 volt here with a regular chuck on it. And then I also have 3 different types of cordless drivers. My favorite is this old Ryobi Tech 4 driver with the clutch. All of these have a clutch on them, and I think that's the most important thing to have when you're using this type of driver on the RC. Now, these all have standard 1/4 inch chucks. This is only 4.8 volts. These are 7.2 volts. I usually have one with a 2mm driver, one with a 2.5, so I don't have to change the tips. I can just grab whatever drill that needs it. A box of shop towels is a must-have. Rubber gloves. And then this is some of my wiring utilities. A heat gun is something that I've found to be most useful for heat shrink or working plastics to allow them to mold into place a little bit better. And then this is my old checkpoint soldering station and my regular solder as well. This is a construction style speed square. I've had it in the box. I found it useful a number of times, either just from actually finding an angle or using it to measure something like ride height, or use it to more easily show ride height in a video. And then next to that square, I've got a number of different pieces of material. My favorite material to use is 025 aluminum. It's rigid enough to be useful for mounting most anything, but it's bendable enough to work it by hand, cut it with tin snips, and it's kind of a good scale size. You can buy it in 1 foot square sheets from McMaster if you don't have a local supply store close enough to you. Blue painter's tape is my favorite thing to put onto the aluminum, trace my pattern, and then cut off of that. Some thin angle aluminum is another raw material that's also super handy to have. If you need to make a quick bracket or something like that that needs to be nice and strong, this stuff works great to, draw your pattern on, cut it out, and it's rigid and strong. Easy to find. You can get this at Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that. I've got this block of wood in the box as well. This is actually super crazy dense stuff that was given to me by a local friend here. I use this as my drill mat, drill down into it rather than my work mat or the table. So that's the not so quick spin around everything that I carry in my RC toolbox. Now, I have other toolboxes with all of my other tools that I need for doing, heavier work or things that are not RC related. But I found this to be pretty much my ultimate RC toolbox setup as far as being easily portable and having 99% of everything that I could need. If you think that there's anything I may have missed, absolutely comment below. Always looking to improve the setup. If I could carry less and do more, absolutely would be a bonus. But with that, guys, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you on the next one.